And welcome back to Red Card. I'm your host, Anthony Totera. And for the last portion of the show, we're going to dedicate it to a grassroots topic I think is important to discuss. And I've gotten a wide range of guys all across this great country of ours to discuss it. And we're going to start off with, right now, former Canadian national team player Guido Titoto, president of Cliff Avenue United. Guido, good morning, and thanks so much for taking time.
Thanks, Anthony. Glad to be on again, and hope you're doing well.
Yeah, I am, and I really appreciate your time. Let's get right to it, Guido.
Yeah.
You as a president of a club, are you training to develop players to achieve wins with medals and trophies and winning showcase events, getting scholarship for players, or are you developing players for the national team?
Okay, that's a loaded question for a youth soccer club, so I'll give you a bit of background. We have about 2,000 kids at our club from U6 to U18, and we do develop kids and have a specific academy program for our more elite player, and then we obviously have a lot of opportunity for our recreational player as well. When we look at developing the players, really we're not looking at the medals or the scholarships at that young age. We're looking at developing them as best as we can to prepare them for the next level beyond our club. So beyond our club, we have the High Performance League in the Lower Mainland here in Greater Vancouver, and beyond that, the Whitecaps residency program. So from our perspective, if we can push kids through to that High Performance League and or beyond that to the Whitecaps residency, then we feel we've done our job as a club. And then we also want to make sure that we don't forget about the other 90% of players that we have playing in the club that are your recreational soccer players. So we try to meet both ends, and we have the opportunities in the two different streams to help kids fulfill that if they have the ability.
Guido, as a president, let's be honest, I'm sure that you're under pressure daily, weekly, monthly by the coaches, your technical director, parents, your board members, to stock those shelves with trophies, to have pictures on the walls of players that have achieved success with a university, with a college, a national team championship for your club, possibly provincial. How stressful is that for you to really focus on the most important thing that I believe and many believe in this country is developing players for the national team?
You know what? We don't honestly see that at our club, and there's a couple of reasons why. At our level with our club, once they get to the U12, U13 level, our more stronger or more elite players really get identified and move on to either the select leagues that we have in the Lower Mainland, the High Performance League, the BC High Performance League, and or the Whitecaps residency program. So when we look at the players that do remain at our club, it's still a very competitive level, and there are trophies to be won and league cups to be won. But really, it's for that elite soccer player where they're looking for opportunities at college or university and or beyond, and or potentially having a shot at making it pro. That really is beyond the scope of our club. We prepare them for that through our academy and our program. So we don't really see that that pressure at our club to make sure that we have the trophies, that we have the medals. That's just a byproduct of how we deliver our programming. And you know what? Our club continues to grow. We're the largest club in Burnaby, over 2,000 or 2,100 kids now at the club.
Guido, let's talk about the coaches in your club. Mentally speaking, are they speaking to these young players and their parents and explaining to them, look, you're going to be developed the best way we feel that we can develop you as a player, and we're not going to be concerned again with those trophies, medals, and all those other things that are really, in the end of the day, okay, but in the big scheme of things, again, it's developing players for the national team. So mentally speaking, are your coaches ingraining that in these young players to think about developing on all aspects of their game instead of looking at that provincial trophy, national championship possibility?
You know, I'd like to think that we are. I think we do a really good job at the start of each season bringing all of our coaches in and setting the context of what expectations are for the season, and so that they understand their age group, because obviously each year our coaches are moving into a different age group with and a lot of them obviously have kids on their team and are volunteer coaches. So all of the coaches at our club, and we have about 270 of them, they are all volunteer coaches. None of them get paid. We do have some paid staff at the club, such as our technical director and some staff coaches that help and assist. But we do help set the right context with our coaches and then we get out to a number of the training sessions and games as best as we can. And the idea is that not only are the coaches then communicating that onto the parents, but us as a club through email communication and through our website are doing the same.
Lastly, before we let you go, Guido, we really appreciate your time. You know, across this country, I would say at the smallest stages all the way up into the high-performance leagues that our players play in, I believe that still today the coaches continuously give more and more time to their so-called best players. Maybe not their complete players, but best players in different positions to, again, achieve that win, achieve that trophy and medal. Are you as a club president trying to change that? Are you trying to instill a different mentality? Because we've seen a lot of borderline players, whether in that starting lineup or on the bench, that aren't given the proper respect and aren't, you know, growing in that development stage completely because those best players are getting all the minutes and responsibilities.
Yeah, good question. You know, for the most part at our club, you know, we have guidelines and protocols around that really is best as we can. It's equal playing time for all. Again, as you get to the levels beyond our club, and that's where your elite players are playing, then that becomes a bit different, where they're competing for spots, competing for positions, and it all depends on performance both at training and during games. So that's where you'll see a bit of a differentiator in the number of minutes being played. However, at our club level, for the most part, it is as close as we can to as providing that equal playing time.
Guido, thank you so much. We really, really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. Keep up the great work there with the Cliff Avenue United and keep growing. It's great in the province of BC to have a club like yours and being progressive the way you are. Thanks again, Guido. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Anthony. Glad to be on. Bye now.
President Guido Titoto, class act, always giving of his time, and what a wonderful player he was in his time as well. Quick commercial break. Coming back, Bobby Smyrniotis of Sigma Academy. We'll get his thoughts on the same questions I posed to Guido. Right back here after this commercial break. Stay tuned. Back to Red Card. I'm your host, Anthony Totera. Thanks again to President Guido Titoto of Cliff Avenue United out there in BC. Great to have him on once again. Joining us right now from Sigma Academy, no stranger to the show, Bobby Smyrniotis. Bobby, welcome.
How's it going, Anthony?
Very good. Thanks so much for taking time. I know that you're a busy guy this time of year, especially with the MLS Cup final, Toronto and Seattle, then the Combine, the draft in your new year, and so much happening. We really appreciate it. So let's get right to it. Bobby, are you as an academy owner training and developing players to achieve wins, medals, trophies, showcase events, scholarships? Or are you developing players to go on to the national team?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, when you're in development, you want to develop them for that last point you brought. And it's not only the national team, but it's to play this game beyond youth football. So we look at youth football at stopping around 17, 18 years old, and you're saying, what are the outlets for the players after that point? So our single mandate at Sigma is to give these guys opportunities to keep on playing the game beyond the youth end. And looking at that, we have to look at the various avenues that we have in North America, whether that is MLS, the other professional leagues, college soccer, both in Canada and the U.S., and we've had a big success with our players moving down into the U.S., and also through our League One team, because I think that's the most important thing. Everyone wants to win, and within our academy, that emphasis comes as you get older, but the biggest emphasis is on the production of players and giving them a route to keep on going and playing this game, because that's the only way we're going to get better in this country. Absolutely.
Bobby, I want you to comment on this next section I have for you. It's more so for club presidents, technical director, and coaches that I'm going to have on after you, but I want to throw it to your way and you give me your thoughts. Do you feel that club presidents, technical directors, coaches, and even board members are pressuring each other to make sure that they're winning provincial championships, going on to nationals, that they're going down to so-called prestigious showcases and getting all sorts of players recognized. Do you feel that they're feeding off each other with pressure in a damning way to the player?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, in North America, soccer is in that vicious cycle. And we look at it throughout the youth game. A lot of people will always talk about, what happens between this U4 team and that U14 team, who won, who's the better team, who's the better club. And if we look at everywhere else in the world, there's not that much talk about youth football. Youth football is a stepping stone to what really matters and is the next step at the pro game or what comes after youth football. And I think, we're kind of stuck in that vicious cycle when there's so much emphasis put on, the prestige of youth football and winning things and so on. And we're still in that cycle here in Canada. It becomes difficult for these club presidents, for technical directors, to get out of that avenue. It's one of the things we started off with as an academy. And, we've got the great ability to control our own destiny by being a smaller group of technical people. And, we said from day one, that's not the one thing that's going to drive us. Our trophies, our wins are going to be our players. And I think that's the best testament to be able to do it. But I do think, the technical directors, coaches, whatever you want to call them, involved in the game, they're in a tough spot because that whole industry of youth football is overly competitive. And the easiest way for people to measure that over time has always been with winning something and so on. And I think once that mentality changes, and that changes with professional football, I think it will change in the coming years if CPL comes to fruition. We'll have more pro soccer, and all of the debate, all of the talk will move into the pro game and allow everyone at the younger ages or at youth football to just sit and do their work.
So, Bobby, then the next question I want to pose to you is, when players come to you with parents, do you and your coaches sit down to them and mentally explain to them that it's not all about winning, it's about developing, it's about making sure you're a complete player, and then of course you want to ingrain in them the winning aspect, because we see with clubs and even some academies, the poaching of players is still out there and it's rampant. How do you get that mental aspect to that player right away to make them understand we're here to develop you first and foremost?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest things we let people know as they're coming in the door, as we've seen them, and we're getting them involved in Sigma. Is we're about the player first, and all the players will make the teams better, because it's easy to put the players into a tactical shape and a tactical form and have them do well on the field, but that's not necessarily making the player better. And we need to make sure that we're making this player better as they go forward. And I think parents understand that. I think the players love it. Because training is geared more towards them. It's exciting. It's energetic. They're always in motion. They're always doing things. And I think that's the best way that young players learn.
Lastly, Bobby, before we let you go, I really appreciate your time. All across this country, I still hear it. I experienced it as a parent with two sons. At the young grassroots level, all the way to the so-called high-performance leagues. And that's another discussion for another day. The favorite players of certain coaches, their best players, continuously get the majority of the time on the field, whether it's a full 90 or 80 plus minutes. And then you get the borderline players, some on the bench, some are out there starting, not getting a full game in. And they suffer because they aren't getting that full development underneath them. But these best players are getting it with the minutes. How do we change that?
Yeah, I think you have to be strong in the way you put your team forward as coaches or as directors, and how you implement playing. We have a single philosophy at Sigma: is if we select a player to be here, that means he's selected to also play. So we look at a rotation of minutes with all of our players. Doesn't matter whether that was Kyle Larin years ago, who was here and was doing fantastic. You don't have many players in our academy who play 90 minutes. Now, we do play an abundance of games. We have a formula of how many games each team has to play, and the formula of how many minutes players should be playing in a calendar year. And that's what we're most importantly looking at, because that's the only way you can really measure a player and their development. Because we can train, but they have to play in those minutes. You have to give them the opportunities to play in those minutes, sometimes even when players are struggling to get there, because they'll be able to grow from that aspect, and you'll be pleasantly surprised at the end.
Bobby, on another side note, very quickly, only a minute of your time that I want to discuss this with, is you and I were sipping our favorite beverage, watching the World Cup draw and shaking our head. No Greece, no Italy. I looked and I saw Iceland, and I said to myself, well, why in the world can we not, Canada, get there? What, again, is that key ingredient that Iceland used for them to get there that you've been reading and watching that we still lack here?
I think there's two things. Even though it's a small country and geographically helps them, they have a level of professional football. And the second thing is they've got a great infrastructure underneath with coach education, which they work very well at, and they've got a lot of good coaches working at all levels of the game, and they've got a single direction on how they want to be able to do things, and that is developing players, and going back to our point before, not being stuck in that vicious cycle of winning games and being the top youth club and so on and so forth. Because in the end of the day, your best practice is always what players are coming out of your organization.
Bobby, thank you so much again for your time. We know you're a busy guy. Good luck in the upcoming MLS draft with some of your players that are possibly eligible. Keep up the good work once again at Sigma, my friend.
Thank you, Anthony.
That is Bobby Smyrniotis of Sigma. Everyone knows them all across North America, not just Canada. These guys have done a tremendous job in developing players. Quick commercial break, and the next from Vaughan Soccer Club Technical Director Carmine Isacco, who's been around a number of years. We'll get his thoughts on the same questions I posed to Guido and to Bobby. Next after this commercial break.
It's gonna work out somehow, and that's it. Just take it nice and slow, and that's it. That's something we...
Welcome back to Red Card. I'm your host, Anthony Totera. Thanks again to Guido Titoto, president of Cliff Avenue United out in BC. Bobby Smyrniotis of Sigma Academy joining us right now. No stranger to the show, no stranger all across Canada. Technical Director of Vaughan Soccer Club, Carmine Isacco. Carm, good morning and welcome.
Morning, Anthony.
Pleasure having you on. Carm, let's get right to it. A few questions here that I posed the two fellows just before you, and I'll pose them with you as well. Are you, as a club technical director, training players to win medals, trophies, succeed at showcase events, get as many scholarships as you can, or are you developing for the national team?
Well, I mean, I think it all encompasses one, and obviously our main goal at a certain point is program oriented, right? And we look for the individual, obviously developing within the group, and success. No matter how people want to say, it's not about the success and it's not about the trophies and all that stuff. It's not the focus for sure, but developing an individual player, they must assimilate with a group, and a group must be organized, and a group must play tactically well. So all that stuff is important, and the sum of all the tactics and all the technique and all the work you do is wins or losses, right? And the mentality that you want to build is also competing and making sure that you're at your best. Does that always include a medal or a trophy or a first place finish? No. But does it facilitate a culture of trying to be at your best all the time? 100%. And and again, we're in a results-oriented business as well. So whether it's our League One team or whether it's our amateur adult programs, that's part of it. That's part of it, and that's part of the growth of a national team player. People forget that national team players need to know how to win, need to know how to compete, and that's part of the recipe of success, and the great perspective that we need to take as a club and developing a culture.
Well, talking about your club, you're in a lucky situation. You've been there a number of years. You've got a wonderful president in Tony Bartolomeo, and I've met a number of your board members, and they're pretty decent people that really care about the game and care about the players. So this question, I think it would be real easy for you to answer. Are you under pressure from your president and some of your board members, or all of them, to produce trophies, to produce provincial and national championships?
No, not at all. But we've had to earn that. We've had to earn that respect, and it's not just about me, it's about our whole staff. I mean, Serge DeLuca and Vince Calabria and the grassroots staff, Luca Forno up to the high-performance staff with Patrice. I mean, they've had to earn the respect and the way we go about our business to be able to go about our business, right? So yes and no. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves to do well. We put a lot of pressures on ourselves to make sure that the players are prepared for the national program, and we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to make sure that we encompass the holism of what it is to be an NCAA or CI or U Sport player or a professional player.
Carm, are you and your staff developing these players, mentally speaking, now that once they come to you, that you're talking to them about the full development package, the full player, the complete player? Are you ingraining that in them? Because let's be honest, some might come from other clubs or some might just be starting at the wee ages, and you want to get this ingrained in them, or are they still ingrained in their head that I've come to this club because they win and that's what I all want to do is win, 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 and that could be a problem.
Yeah, that could be an issue, but I mean, most of the players or the group that we developed through the years have gone through our system, and I mean, our environment, unlike say a TFC environment, it doesn't need to be, and don't take me the wrong way, not that they're toxic, but it doesn't have to be competitive to that level. You know, at 10 years old, they're bringing in players and they're competing against each other at 10 years old. Ours is about nurturing. Ours is about growing. Ours is about making sure that they get the proper support, right? They get the proper balance between discipline and nurturing and growth and fostering. But when they reach a certain level, well, let's say our high performance program, things get a little bit more intense, whether it's expectations, whether it's level of training, whether it's level of commitment, whether it's level of prioritizing, whether it's, you know, the balancing between academics and soccer. But we like to believe, and more times than not, I think it's come to the forefront that we do a good job of preparing these kids for that next level.
In and across this country, I still believe we have this issue. I've experienced this as a parent with two boys in the system. They're now out. I hear it from parents still consistently, whether at the low ages, at the grassroots level, all the way to the high performance area. Certain players that the coach believes is their best players to get results are getting the majority of minutes, majority of responsibility. And the other borderline players, whether on the bench or on the field, are not developing that many are starting to see continuously year in and year out. How do we change that?
Well, Anthony, it's about the program base. It's about the program base. So you have 36 kids, say at a high performance level, which would right now be our 2001s per se. They're all training together. They're doing the same things technically, tactically, but obviously there's going to be a differentiation of level, of speed of play, of speed of thought. So two things need to happen. They need to understand that maybe playing at the lower level is going to make them develop more. Maybe playing at where a club must offer, you know, different levels of not only for their technical and tactical development, for their personal achievement. So two things have to happen: that the ego of the player and the parent need to understand that these players might be better off developing at a so-called lower level and being a bigger part of the picture, rather than, you know, and still getting the level of training and the level of speed of play with the other players, because it's program-oriented rather than team-oriented. So that's important as well. So every club should be offering different levels of play and placing kids, and even at the grassroots level, where they will be best served as far as all the soccer stuff, but also the personal achievement stuff, which is very important. But again, this can't be fogged within the eyes of the player or the parent.
Well said. Yeah, well said. I totally agree with you on that, Carm. We only got a minute here. On a side note, just had on Bobby Smyrniotis and Guido Titoto out in BC with Cliff Avenue United. One obviously has some Greek blood in him. One has some Italian blood. And we all watched and were shaking our head with no Greece and no Italy in the World Cup. But I was smiling and I was saying to myself, look at that, Iceland. And we here in Canada just can't get to another World Cup for the longest time. What in your mind is going through when you see Iceland there and Canada not there?
I mean, Iceland's a smaller country, and people say that's worse, but I think it's better because they could centralize all the programming, they could centralize all the developing, they could centralize all the level of coaching. So that's important. And at some point, Canada's going to have to move away from the recreational mentality and say, hey, we've got to put the best to best and give the opportunity to players just underneath the opportunity to get to that level 100%. But until we have the CPL, until we have the idea that players develop at different rates, and we need to play them. Those players that aren't at TFC, they still have a second level. Those players that aren't in the top tier of the second level, we can put them in a level below, and they have opportunities to get to that level because we all know they develop at different rates. But we need to understand that the OPDL and the League One and all those leagues have to be, for lack of a better word, elite leagues, elite player leagues, high-level player leagues, where they're challenging each other to be better.
Well said. Carmine Isacco, Technical Director of Vaughan Soccer Club, thanks so much again for making time, and really appreciate your insight after so many years here at the grassroots level, my friend.
Thank you, Anthony, and keep up the good work, sir.
Appreciate it. That is Carmine Isacco, Technical Director of Vaughan Soccer Club. Quick commercial break. Coming back, Paul Harris of Ottawa South United. Stay tuned.
But now we keep fighting about all these useless things.
And welcome back to this grassroots special. Once again, thanks to Cliff Avenue United President Guido Titoto, Bobby Smyrniotis of Sigma Academy, Carmine Isacco, Technical Director of Vaughan Soccer Club. We were supposed to have Paul Harris on of Ottawa South United, but we can't get a hold of him, so we fast-tracked a guy that right now is starting a new position, and he is with St. Albert, and that is Jeff Paulus. Jeff, good morning, and thank you.
Good morning, Anthony. Thank you again for having me on. How are you?
Pleasure's all mine. Better yet, how are you? Congratulations on that position. Tell us a little bit about it quickly before we get on to the job at hand here.
Yeah, thanks for that. It's actually it's a bit of a partnership actually with FC Edmonton. So of course, Tom Fath is going to keep our academy going at FC Edmonton, so I'll continue my role there as the director of that program. But of course, my numbers now are a bit decreased with FC Edmonton. So I've taken on the full-time job of technical director of St. Albert. It's a good-sized club. Our own city, I think we've got just under 5,500 registrants. All the way from the youngest ones to to about 4 or 5 senior programs. And it's where I live. So it's 10 minutes to my office now, and it's just another opportunity to try a different project.
And this is perfect timing for me to have you involved in this discussion right now. And it's simply this. Let's start it and let's get it going, Jeff. Are you, as now a club technical director, training to develop players to win medals, trophies, go to showcase events and win each and every game, get as many scholarships as you can? Or are you preparing to develop these players for the national team?
100% national team, 100%. I've put on, I actually tweeted out yesterday, my office, I've got this nice, good-sized whiteboard, and I put my plan down there, and I'm going to check off things as I start to accomplish them before the outdoor season. And not one thing on that checklist is anything about winning games. And I've been against that. I've been vocally against it. I've been vocally against the mentality of that winning. Winning is everything at the youth level, because I think it's a detriment to developing players when they're young. And so now I get to put my money where my mouth is. But now it's our goal is to have a male and female player at every age group with Canada Soccer on a national project, and that's our goal as a club. And if we'll have failed if we can't do that.
Now, this might be difficult for you to answer since you just came on board with St. Albert, but I'm sure that you must have had some questions for the president and the board. Do you feel that you're under pressure, Jeff, now that you've taken on this position to get to provincial finals, to win provincial medals and national club championships? Or are you going to be left alone to develop players the way you see fit?
Yeah, I'm fortunate, Anthony. There's some great people there, and I know the people in St. Albert quite well. It's where I got my start when I first moved to Alberta about 15 years ago with St. Albert. And so I've come full circle, and some of the same people are around. They've got the same mentality that I do, Anthony, and they want to develop players. They want me to drive the club to become a Category 1 club with this new Canada Soccer licensing program that'll come out. So that's my mandate is to build the club to that level. There's no pressure for us to win games. I mean, if we, at the end of the day, we all know if we do our job with the young kids and get it right and develop good players, then the winning becomes a byproduct when they're U17, when they're U19, and when they're U20, and they're competing, to get into different events. But so if we do our job right in the first place, and that will come. And the board is the board that I'm working for right now. The president of the club, the executive director, Chris Vidal, was also with me at Canada Summer Games. That's the mandate, is to develop players, and I've been under absolutely zero pressure at all to come in and turn a club around to all of a sudden win medals and flaunt our successes. That won't happen unless we're flaunting the success of a player making a national team.
Well said. Jeff, are you now developing, mentally speaking, players more concerned about developing themselves and becoming a complete player? Because we know this, it's a disease all across this country. Mums and dads, for the most part, are pretty good, but there's some there, all they care about is the wins and don't want to be on any middle table team or bottom table team. But if some of them are developing well on those teams, I'd rather keep my son there. How do you start ingraining this mentally, that it's all about developing the player to the player?
Yeah, so that's actually, that's always going to be the difficult challenge, isn't it? And how do you keep your players, and how do you stop them from getting, pulled to the teams that simply recruit to win? And I've said that was a problem in the past year, certainly in Edmonton, and I believe that. And so the first thing we're going to do, Anthony, is actually it's going to stem around parent education. And with every parent group, we're going to start this with grassroots, all the way down to the youngest kids when they first come in. We're going to meet with parents as a group, myself and members of my staff, and we're going to talk about what the club is all about, what the importance is, and what we're trying to achieve. And hopefully the fact that we've been able to develop players to the FC Edmonton Academy using a model that's specifically designed to develop players, not to win games for the academy. When we've pushed players on to our first team, to the Whitecaps, to Amir Didic with Sporting KC. So we've had some success in doing that, and hopefully that will be enough of an influence that they'll buy in, because the proof is in the pudding. There, we've developed players with a development policy in place, and that same policy, the same game model, is coming to St. Albert Soccer now with how we're going to develop our kids. And so I think if I start with the parents first, if I actually spend a lot of time early if I can get to every parent in our club, I'm going to do that. That's my intent. And the education will start with them.
Lastly,
and if we can get by. Oh, sorry, Anthony, go ahead. Yeah,
no.
I finished. That's good.
No, finish off your thought, Jeff.
No, you're right. I'm kind of just rambling on there about that, because I think we've all talked about the importance of parent education.
Absolutely.
If we get it right with them, then we've got them in our club. Anyhow.
Absolutely. No, those are all great points, Jeff. Last point is this, Jeff. I want to get your thoughts on this. All across this country of ours, let's be honest, whether it's at the small ages, at the grassroots level, all the way up to the so-called high elite level leagues, the coach has its best players that it likes to use continuously in important game situations. It gets to get the 90 minutes full out. But there's too many borderline players that aren't developing, whether on the bench, those players, or even in that starting lineup that are only getting half a game. But those best players are pushed out because, unfortunately, there still are coaches that all they think about is the medals and trophies and that ego that they need to stroke. How do we get rid of this?
Yeah, it's not development, is it, when you do that? So I've just had an interesting, 4 or 5 hour Twitter kind of back and forth with the man who I've got respect for, but we have a different opinion on how you develop players. And the winning mentality, okay, if you're playing for a national final and you're a CIS team, go nuts, play your players and win your national title. But the problem is when they're young and they're 14, 15, 16 years old, if players that you don't consider to be your top 11 never get a chance to go into a game when you're down a goal or you have to hold on to a 1-0 lead, those players have no chance of developing. And every player has to see every situation that they're going to face in any game, and you never know what a player is made out of or made of unless you give them those situations. But putting kids in when it's 3 or 4 or 5-0, you'll never tell a thing about a kid at that point.
Well said.
Well ahead,
Well said, Jeff, and that's what I love about you, is because exactly that. How do you know if you're down a goal or up a goal, what the borderline player can do, unless you instill that confidence, unless you give that responsibility for them to develop? Because if you're going to rely on those, as we all know, those 3 or 4 that the coach continuously, let's say, trusts, and the other ones you don't trust, how are they going to develop? That's the key question. Jeff, listen, thank you so much. Congratulations at St. Albert. As I've always said this to you, you belong at the highest level possible in this country, which I believe is coming very, very soon, which is CPL. And I think we'll see you on a bench, whether in 2019, in 2020. I think guys like you, and there's many out there across this country that deserve that next challenge. So again, congratulations for the moment, but get ready for the next challenge, Jeff.
Thank you very much. You've been very supportive, Anthony, and I definitely appreciate it. So thank you for that.
Class act. That is Jeff Paulus now with St. Albert. Quick commercial break coming back. We're going to finish it up with Paul Harris. We've connected with him, Ottawa South United. Stay tuned.
It's gonna work out somehow. That's it. Just take it nice.
And welcome back to Red Card. I'm your host, Anthony Totera. Thanks again to Guido Titoto, president of Cliff Avenue United out in BC, Bobby Smyrniotis of Sigma, Carmine Isacco, technical director of Vaughan Soccer Club, and then Jeff Paulus, newly right there at St. Albert as their new technical director. Congratulations to Jeff. Joining us right now, no stranger to the show, we've connected with him, is Paul Harris of Ottawa South United. Paul, good morning and welcome.
Hi, Anthony. Thanks for having me back on again.
Pleasure's all mine. Paul, let's get right to it. You as a club technical director, are you training players to develop, to win medals, trophies, to go to showcase events and win that event, to get as many scholarships possible? Or are you developing them with your staff to become national team players?
Yeah, I think obviously, Anthony, you know about our club, and there's lots of other good clubs that you know down in the Toronto area as well as across Canada, and it's a balance. We've obviously got to try and offer as many exit routes to players as possible. For the vast majority of our players, we want them to carry on playing soccer for life, but we have some elite level players that we're trying to get into university scholarships, and we're trying our best to showcase them in whatever ways we can. We want to try and maximise everybody's potential to be the best that they can be. And I think somewhere along the line, if you've got successful teams that are doing well, it draws attention to your club and your players. I mean, our ambition is to move players forwards. We've had a number of players move into professional academies, same as obviously, people like Vaughan and Carmine Isacco, and that's our little part in the journey. We think for them to reach the national team, they probably need to go somewhere else and move into that professional environment where they can offer them a little bit more than us as an amateur club.
Now, Paul, you're one of the lucky guys, but I'm going to ask you this nonetheless, and I know your president, Bill Michalopoulos of Ottawa South United, class act, well-spoken, he's strategically sound when it comes to the game, and I know what he's done with that club. But I'm going to ask you nonetheless, are you and your staff under pressure to produce national, provincial, and as many as possible trophy championships from tournaments by your president and his board?
I think there's an expectation with a club our size, Anthony, and I'll be honest, part of the pressure is self-driven. For myself, I want to be successful, and I want to be known as a person that is in charge of one of the biggest and best clubs in Canada. I think, yes, there's a feeling that we do have to try and be as successful as possible, whether it be winning trophies or things like that, but also we have got a reputation for putting players into provincial programs, for putting players into pro academies, and that attracts a lot of players into our club at the youngest ages because they know that we're serious. Last year we added the League One component to the club because we wanted to try and extend the life and opportunities for players at OSU. So I think the pressure is not so much on me from the board, Bill and Jim, the general manager, but external pressure from myself and the staff in terms of wanting to be successful and wanting to be in and around them best events year in, year out, and having that reputation of pushing players into pro academies.
Paul, are you and your staff developing, mentally speaking now, the players when they arrive to your club, or even when they get there to the later stages to your club, mentally speaking, are you developing them to be first and foremost, to be concerned about a complete player, making themselves a complete player in development, or are you, getting that from them as they're coming in, that all they want to do is win, trophies and medals, and that's all they want? Are you trying to ingrain in them the full, complete package of development?
I think so. I think obviously some of the changes that the OSA made in terms of no scores, no standings, has just slightly altered the effects over here in Canada. I think I'd be lying if I said people weren't still competitive and had winning deep down, because I don't think you can be successful if you don't want to win. But I think what's happened is there's been a change in philosophy of football. It's not a win at all costs mentality where people are playing, horrible style of football. I think what we try and do here is get them to all play, the teams play in the right way, and get them to understand that by, playing football the right way and showing themselves well is their best opportunity of moving forwards. It is difficult because, as you're talking about, Anthony, there's loads of different aspects to development. People use the word development, and I think it's an easy word to use because, as you said, it's not just on the pitch, from the technical and tactical side. There's also the physical side, but a lot of it I'm seeing now with the players is the psychological and the social and emotional side, trying to teach them players how to mix in, because at some point they're going to move away from my club and they've got to be able to go and mix in and be adaptable and take on new instructions of the coach where they're going into. And that, I think, is the biggest thing in terms of development. Sometimes is overlooked. That social and emotional side is really, really important in the team sport.
Paul, lastly, before we let you go, appreciate your time. I've seen this for a number of years with my two boys in the system. They're now out. I want your thoughts from Europe and here as quickly as you can. At the grassroots young ages, all the way up to the so-called elite leagues, I believe that, again, too many coaches are depending on those best players for a full 90 minutes, give them a ton of responsibility, leadership, on and on. But the borderline players, whether on the bench or even the ones that are starting, that might not be getting the full 90, aren't getting that taste to develop with important situations, with important leadership skills that they might have, because those coaches believe in those 3 or 4 players. How do we change this?
It's the hardest thing I get as a technical director, Anthony, and the truth is the kids don't get better without playing. I think we have to try and find a way of creating more match opportunities. The matches over here have been restricted a little bit in terms of the number that you're allowed, whereas I think we need to be able to have more opportunities and play, and like you say, give everybody that opportunity to play, whether it be in different positions, rotating their roles. We managed to arrange it this year in one of our groups where instead of having 2 teams in the league, we had 3 teams, and we split the talent pool a lot wider, and we changed who they're playing with each week, and it's meaning that they're getting longer to play, and it's been a huge success, Anthony, because that is the biggest thing why the kids start playing the sport. They want to play.
Absolutely. Paul Harris of Ottawa South United, thanks again for making time. The best of the holiday season to you and yours and all the people there at Ottawa South United. Thanks again for taking time, Paul.
Thanks, Anthony. The same to you and all your family and everybody, all your listeners.
Appreciate it. That is Paul Harris. Always love talking to him. He's very well spoken, understands the game inside out. Once again, thanks to Guido Titoto, president of Cliff Avenue United, Bobby Smyrniotis of Sigma Academy, Carmine Isacco, technical director of Vaughan Soccer Club, Paul Harris, as you heard, from Ottawa South United, Jeff Paulus of St. Albert. Thank you out there. This was our Grassroots special. We'll continuously do that week in and week out. We'll dissect a different topic. And if you have a topic you want me to discuss or talk about, tweet me at 4Totera. That's 4Totera. Thanks again.
Oh, baby, take it slow. And that's it. Just take it nice and slow. And that's it. Oh, that's something we